There you go. I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. We're really blessed to have everyone here. Just want to do a couple of notes. If you need to get a cup of coffee or you want to get something else for breakfast, please feel free. I'm going to roll right through some things here. I wanted to first thank you for your attendance. This is important, whether we sometimes recognize it or not. We have a great group of people here, a great group of like-minded people. Make sure you go and say hello to somebody that you don't know. Okay, so that's the first point of business. Second point of business is, we do 2 of these breakfasts a year, and we also have a meet and greet. We're always looking for a sponsor. If anybody's interested, you can come and see me or Jack or somebody on the committee afterwards. We have our committee together who helps with these things, and I'm just going to call them out real quick. We got Father Joe Campellone, Father Jack Kolodziej, Paul O'Reilly, Brian Canfield, Jim Mackin, Dave Schaefer, and Sean Geis. So I want to say thank you to them for all their help and for their planning.
Thank you.
We have an honored guest here. We have State Senator Jimmy Dillon. Where you at, Jimmy? Raise your hand. There you go. Thank you for your attendance. Okay. We have a couple of upcoming events. We have a black tie on January 13th at the Philadelphia Union League. It is a tremendous time. If it's not your thing, no pressure, but if it is, talk to us about it. You will not regret it. It's a great night out. There's the QR codes on your table. If you want to find out more information, please just scan them with your camera on your phone. You'll get all the information that you need. We do a lot here. It is a Catholic group. We do a lot here sometimes where we go up to our great priests and we ask them to pray for us. But we do have a couple of our great priests who are going through some things, and we want to ask your prayers. Father Bob Mazzoli's father just recently passed away, and Father Bill Keach, he was only 97 years old, and he just passed away. So please keep them and each other's prayer lists in your thoughts and in your prayers, all right? Because it works both ways for us. Please make sure that you register on the way in with Beth, right? We'll keep you posted. It's not onerous at all. We might send you an email every so often, but please be registered. We like to make sure that we know who's here. And please stay engaged, right? So this group is a good group. It's a good group of people. And I thought real quick I was going to tell you about a paragon of Salesian virtue. His name is Brian Johnson. He's the lead singer of AC/DC. Stick with me, you'll learn things. You can actually use this in your homily, Father. But real quick, one time he was being interviewed and they said to him, what do you say to your critics who say you made 11 albums and they all sound the same? And he said, that's a dirty, filthy lie. We've made 12 albums. Right, be who you are, right? So we have a group of people here. We're not perfect, but we have a good group of people here. Be who you are. I want to teach St. Francis. So anyway, enough from me. Father Jack.
Again, good morning, everyone, and we're so glad you're here. A couple of bumps along the way with traffic and weather, but we got here, and as you said about St. Francis, live the present moment. He says, don't worry about what happened an hour ago, what's going to happen an hour from now. Just enjoy the present moment, and that's why we're here. And we're here under the title, the DeSales Network, which was started by Father Bill Guerin, who many of you know, some of you don't know, and that's part of our mission, to let you know the good things he did as an oblate. Again, I want to thank my brother oblates. Most of them are here in black, and they're all here to support you, to support this mission. And the mission of the DeSales Network is to honor the memory of Father William Guerin. The DeSales Network offers engagement and social opportunities for spiritual growth for gospel-minded people. Francis DeSales said we need to live the gospel. The gospel is what we put into practice, the way we live our moments, our days. Gospel-minded practices in the spirit of our patron, Francis DeSales, to fuel the grace that, in the words of Father Guerin, was to get us to heaven. That's our goal. So that's what we do, whether we're here listening to one another, learning, talking, sharing, whether we're driving on 95 or we're just enjoying time with our family and friends. That's how we live our vocation, by being ourselves and being that well, doing the ordinary in an extraordinary way. So keep doing that, keep supporting each other. That's what Father Guerin would want. And we thank you for all you do. And as Rich said, you know, there's different events, there's socials, there's spiritual things, there's ways that we try to put the gospel into practice each day. So thank you for joining us today. And I'll just begin with a prayer that many of you, if you went to North or Judge or our school in Wilmington, Salesianum, we all pray a prayer called the Direction of Intention, which helps us each day to just set our mind and to set our goals and to just say, Lord, help me to get through this day. So let's take a moment to call to mind we're in God's presence. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. My God, I give you this action. Please give me the grace to conduct myself during it in a manner most pleasing to you. St. Francis de Sales. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen.
Father Joe?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm real excited about today. I've known Chris since 1994. We know him as Bundy, people that are in the Flyers family, but we'll call him Chris. We won't get into why he's called Bundy today. Chris's story, which you're going to hear, has a lot of similarities with Salesian spirituality, and Rich was talking about perfections and imperfections. St. Francis de Sales wrote a lot about imperfections and perfection, but he said to become perfect, which is different in the eyes of God and him, you need to know your imperfections. You need to know it, you need to own it, and you need to grow with it and to change. All of us in our lives have dealt with imperfections. And while we're here today, I want us to listen intently to a man that had a lot of, just like us, a lot of it, but was willing to hear God and continue to move. His similarities with the Oblates go far too. When Chris first went into treatment, Father Bill Holberg was one of his mentors. Father Bill, an Oblate, a great priest, and was at what we call Chit Chat, which is now called the Karen Foundation, and he ministered there for many years. Chris knew a lot of priests. Not all of them liked him. There was one in particular, and this was my first conversation with Chris in about 95, 96. I was studying in Washington, D.C., and Chris is a product of Providence College. And we're sitting there, and he's talking about Dominicans. And I'm like, yeah, I have this Dominican right now, and he's busting my balls like crazy. And he said, what's his name? And I said, Father Folsey. He said, Father Folsey? He's the guy who told me I would never make it in hockey. I said, really? And he's the guy who gave me a D-. Chris continued in his life as a great hockey player. And let me tell you why. In my time with the Philadelphia Flyers, I had many conversations with GMs that were there, especially Mr. Clark, very good friends with Mr. Snyder. Chris doesn't know this, but there were many teams that wanted him. There were many teams that gave trade offers throughout his career. Chris is the longest mainstay Flyer than any other Flyer defenseman in the history of Flyers. And why? Number one, there's not one player that can take the star of another team and just shut them down. Whether if it's Yager, Lemieux, Pavel Berry, and I know that for a fact because I got to know those guys as I got older. He shut them down. The second part of why he was great is that his teammates loved him. If you read his book, and I hope a lot of you guys and ladies buy him, you'll see that he was admired by so many people that loved him. And it was that love that carried him, I believe, to sobriety. At the Flyers games, Chris was the last one out. He would always be to the side of the glass and hit everybody with the stick, and then he would come to show his loyalty to his players, and he did that for years. So I'm gonna let Chris talk about his own story. I'm fortunate to have him as a friend, And now as a colleague, we work together, we do interventions together. He's the best. We walk into somebody's living room, and I've been to many interventions, and I've never seen someone that could connect to another person that's struggling with addiction than Chris Therien. So without further ado, my buddy Chris Therien.
Good morning, everybody. One thing Father Joe had actually forgot to tell you was that I've been to the bar with him a few times. So you're part of the story now. You can't get out of it. As I said, thanks everybody. Father Joe had asked me to do this a few months ago, and when I looked at the calendar, I wasn't really sure what my fall would look like and how things were shaping up, because I had a feeling some new things would be on the horizon. It's a real honor to be here today among so many professionals in the Philadelphia area. I met, I knew him from before, Jimmy Dillon, a Notre Dame grad who actually worked with my daughters in their off-season training. Great to see you, and so many other of the faces that I've met in a lot of the Northeast functions over, especially the last year. So it's just great to be here. I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm going to keep it as quick as I can on a Friday morning. As Father Joe said, it's probably too complimentary, but the first thing I will say is that story at Providence is absolutely true. Father Folsey was the most diehard hockey fan that you could find, and I'm thinking to myself, well, this is perfect. I'm just gonna take advantage of this guy and walk out with an A. And the class was like, I think it was about family and marriage, Christian marriage, And I'm thinking, well, Father Folsey's teaching. So I remember the guy gave me a D minus, and I was trying to grind him for a better grade. And that night we played Friday night against Boston College, and there's Father Folsey. Of course, they're the Jesuits, and we're the Dominicans. They hated each other, the priests. It was a big rivalry. And I see him at the glass before the game, banging at the glass, like, come on, Chris, go get him. Like, what about the D minus? Anyway, that's where I left it. But, my story, I think, is very much, I look at my journey in life, and I think in a lot of ways that it was set up to happen here in this town, in this area with these people. I came here in 1994. I was, I think, 22, 23-year-old kid. I made the Flyers right out of training camp. And mind you, I came from a Catholic family, born in Ottawa, Canada. I had one sister. It was just me and her, and mom and dad. My passion as a kid was hockey. I'd go to the rinks. Ottawa, my hometown, is known for having the longest skating rink in the world, the Rideau Canal, and it's pretty easy. My dad would drop me off downtown and said, I'll meet you in an hour. I'll pick you up at Dow's Lake, and that's how it went. And you couldn't not learn to pick up skating and athletics, especially when it's minus 40 out and you're skating down the middle of the canal with wind blowing in your face, and it was cool. And I played hockey, and I had a very, very normal upbringing. Great parents, grandparents, good family. And the one thing I will say is I went through, like a lot of people here, through athletics or people coaching athletics. There's a lot of pressure on young people, I think, and there's some now, there's always been. I have 4 kids of my own that do all the sports, and I look back at that and I realize the pressures that I went through as a young teen, mid-teen. My story is interesting. When I quit hockey at 14 because I got cut from 2 hockey teams. One of them, my dad was the assistant coach on, and the head coach didn't tell him that he was cutting me. I'm like, that doesn't get any worse than that. I mean, that's as embarrassing as it comes. And I get in my car, and Dad goes, how'd it go? I go, well, I got cut. I think he said, well, am I still coaching? I had to absorb stuff like that, and I actually quit for an entire year, and I skied. I tell people that, like hockey parents now, they're like, no, you didn't. I said I did. I actually, in a lot of ways, I think it's why I ended up getting better, why I made it as far as I did for hockey, was I gave my mind kind of a cleaning, and I didn't realize it at the time. It wasn't until my dad got me to the United States where things changed for me. I went to Northwood Prep School, Lake Placid, just 7 years after the great Miracle on Ice in 1980, and played in that rink, which was just something. Went there 3 years, again. And at this time, really, drinking and addiction is not part of my story at all. Just a normal kid trying to get through, find my way as a 15, 16-year-old kid, 17-year-old. And what happened was I changed. My body changed. My everything did. No one knew where I was. There's no social media. I got out of Ottawa. My dad said, let's get restart. And he believed in me. I had someone believe in me. And I went off to Northwood, and I had a great 3 years there. I became the most recruited high school player in the country. No one saw that coming. And I was drafted in one of the best drafts in the history of the National Hockey League in 1990. Some amazing players came out of that draft. I was a 3rd round pick, 47th overall out of that high school in Lake Placid, and that's where my journey began. It was with the Flyers. I never realized at the time, when you think about what happens in life, that when you get picked by that one team, you don't really understand, or at the time as an 18-year-old, that that's going to be where your destiny winds up if you make it. So I came from Ottawa, and everything transcended with a couple stops in the middle. I went from Northwood to Providence College on a full scholarship, did 3 years there, played in the Olympic team in 1994 for Team Canada, where I won a silver medal, and then immediately came to the Flyers. I had a pretty easy journey into the NHL. It wasn't without hiccups along the way, but when I finally got to where I needed to be, where I had to feel I was trying out for the team and I matured a lot, it was pretty evident I was going to play in the NHL and be a mainstay player. But I went through a lot to get there. I went through a lot more than most 15, 16-year-old kids that go wondering who I am, trying to identify with myself. Didn't have a lot of friends, was bullied terribly. I wasn't the biggest kid in the world. I was pretty, like, my parents weren't big people. I was a shorter guy, and I don't know what happened. And people say they go away, and I grew exponentially over the course of 2 years. People, I came back like, where did this guy come from? My dad's 5'8", and I look just like him, so there was no doubt about it. But in case there was any question. So I come to Philadelphia. This is really where my story in rise and fall at the same time happened, and it was because of addiction, and alcohol was my drug of choice. I made the all-rookie team my first year. I hardly drank. Like a couple nights my first year in the league, I drank. That was it. I was a social drinker in college. Pick your nights, pick your spots. Was not something I thought about, was drinking. Never. It was like there, but it's great if guys go out, I'll go out, but not something I ever thought about. I had an amazing first 3 years in the league. I got benched my 3rd year for 9 games. It was a challenge for me. First challenge I had as a professional. I rebounded exactly how a coach would want you to rebound. I took it in stride, and I came back, and 3 weeks later after that benching, I ended up playing with one of the top 2 best defensemen in Flyers history, Eric Desjardins. The other guy would be Mark Howe for me in terms of who's the best in Flyers. But I got to play with Eric Desjardins for 10 years. That's an eternity with one partner on one team in one league. So I was blessed with a lot of amazing things happened to me. A lot of great people in my life, people like Father Joe, a lot of great friends, colleagues, people in Philadelphia. I understood very quickly the quality of the person in this town. Amazing people, amazing fans. We get to see it when there's a home Phillies game, when there's a great playoff game for the Flyers. Philly comes together, but as much as they are fans, you guys are an amazing community of people that care for one another and stick up for one another. And I think that's probably why the sports in this town has such an appeal to it, because I think you see a lot of real people that really care about things that maybe some people don't think are important, but it brings a community together, and sports certainly does that. It wasn't until I would say 2000, I ended up along the way, I met a local girl, we got married. She was from Gloucester Township, and we had 4 kids. We had 3 daughters and a son. Isabella was my first. She was born in 1998. It was my first child. Nothing was better for me than being a dad. I mean, I loved it. There was nothing more I ever wanted than to be a dad. And Isabella was just the love of my life. When I saw her for the first time, I couldn't believe it. I had this little girl, and she was perfect. And man, I did everything to be a good dad. I wanted nothing more to be a good dad, and I was at times. But drinking was starting to catch up with me. And as it's turned into the new millennium around 2000, I probably noticed that I was drinking more than I did earlier in my career. I was still playing an awful lot. And that descent happened for probably the next 3 or 4 years. It didn't get too bad. It was very manageable for me. I was still early 30s, late 20s, where you're still able to get up in the morning and bounce back. But teammates knew about it. People would see it sometimes. And I think the part for me when I look back at it is I have a lot of guys would say, just leave him alone, let him play, he's fine. And that would probably be true. I was the guy, as I tell people, I'd be the guy drinking till 2 in the morning in the summer, and then I'd be at the track at 6 o'clock yelling at everybody with myself, let's go, we gotta go harder. That's just the way my head was programmed. I think that puts a lot of pressure into someone's head, and I think it leaves a lot of foul taste sometimes in your head when you live a life like that. Make a long story really short. My sister was a huge part of me and where I was with drinking. She wanted me to get sober. She wanted me to be healthy. And we talked a lot about that. She knew that it was becoming a problem. Diana at home, my wife, was having a problem with it. Isabella was getting to 4 or 5 years old. And the worst thing that could ever happen to an alcoholic happened. We had a lockout, a work stoppage, late in my career. I had a little money in the bank. I knew that time was winding down, and I took that year and I abused alcohol like you can't imagine. It was the first time in my life I realized that I had to get up in the morning and have a drink just to get through that morning, and then drink again in the afternoon. It was like, that's where the cycle began. 2004 in the fall is when that began for me, and I could not get away from the withdrawals and the symptoms I had of the withdrawals. It killed me. It was awful. So that's why people ask why alcoholics keep drinking. That's why they keep drinking. It's not because they want to. It's because it's a necessity. Your body's calling out for it. 2004, I get traded to Dallas after 12 years in Philadelphia. It was a kind of a cup of coffee stay in Dallas, and I went there and I didn't waste any opportunity to continue the party. The NHL, as I said, the NHL lockout happens in 2004-05, and I was really bad. Like, I was not in good shape, and I was drinking a lot. And I got a call from the Flyers, said, we want to sign you again. After trading me to Dallas the year before the lockout, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I just don't know if I can do it. But leading up to that ended up being one of the worst life events that I could have gone through. Through all the pain that I'd had, I got a concussion in 2005. And this is a part where that last year was my last year coming into it. I had to, it was a December game, and I remember we were tied it was a 0-0, I think, with Calgary. And it was December of 05, and I remember in the locker room, I had such bad withdrawal that I had to go to my car and take a water bottle of vodka, and I chugged it. And I went back on the ice in the third period of an NHL game, and I was the best player on the ice. It's pathetic. And that broke my heart. It did, having to resort to that to get myself through the pain that I was in and how I struggled with alcohol. And I knew at that point that was, there's no coming back from that in my own head. It still bothers me to this day. It'd be the one thing I'd say that I wish I could go back, but I couldn't do anything about it. As I said, I didn't have a choice. I could have died. That's how dire and advanced my alcoholism was. A month later, my career was over. I had an awful concussion. I'd had concussions my whole career. And I left the rink, and I just kind of went off into my own. I didn't want to be seen by anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to alienate. As he thinks things are going to get better, they get worse. In June of 2006, I get a call one morning that my sister had a cardiac event, and a week later she had passed in the hospital with a lot of stuff in between. Really somebody that had I just cared so much for and understood where her heart was, that she wanted her brother to get well. I eulogized her at her funeral, drinking before it just to stay steady. And that was the end of a lot of things for me. My career was over. There's a positive side to this, and what happens is after Sarah's passing, we had my son in November of 06, and I still say it was the greatest blessing ever. I had 3 daughters, now I had a son. They're all born a couple of years apart, and I was done with hockey. And fortunately for me, I've made enough friends over the years. And mind you, I had a great career. You know, drinking was at the end. I did a lot of great things here. I had an amazing rivalry with Jaromir Jagr, some huge playoff games. I got to the finals, a lot of accolades. And you know what, so I don't look at that. My career was great. I didn't like how it ended on a personal note for me, how I treated myself. And I had to live with that. I had to own that. As I said, I made enough friends at the Flyers after a year of doing some pre and post game on NBC. It was Comcast at the time. I ended up going up to radio. I did radio for 7 years. It was great. I loved it. Had a great job with Tim Saunders. And then they moved me to TV for 4 years. I was between the benches, and that ended abruptly. Then I went to back to post game. I've been all over the place for the Flyers. I've worn a lot of hats for them. There's a great story to that too. In 2020, after the pandemic, the guy at NBC, that probably the one person that didn't like me, let me go. And the Flyers said, well, they were paying half the salary. He said, we're going to let him go too. So I got fired for nothing. And I said, man, I've never really, this is odd. Like, I don't know what to do. What am I going to do? And here I was, 15 years in recovery. I went to Karen in 2006. This is part, I'm skipping around here. After my sister died, I came back and I went to rehab. First time, I went to Karen Foundation. Father Joe said, used to be Chit Chat. And I went into Karen, and to this day, my blood alcohol level was still higher than anybody they've ever had at Karen. It was a 0.63. You're dead at a 0.4. And I was walking and talking. If you said, Chris, I want you to come up at the 0.63, come to the podium and talk like I am now, I would have been able to do it. No problem. People wouldn't have believed that. Like I said, if a cop had pulled me over, he said, I'm sorry, sir, but the breathalyzer's broken. There's no way you can even talk. And that's how advanced I was, to be able to get to that kind of a level and have that blood alcohol level. I went and did, after that though, you know what, I got myself straight for 2 years. I had more hiccups after that, but I was doing radio. I got stuff with the Flyers, I was working. I felt good about myself in a lot of ways. I went to TV after that, and as I said, 2020, I got let go. And someone says to me, what are you gonna do? Well, I was never really someone that was gonna sit around and do nothing. And I had a friend that I went to Eagles games with, and he said, you know what? I said, I love doing recovery work. I'm in AA, I'm in all of the rooms, I'm in with all of my great friends, a part of it now. I said, why don't we open a treatment center? And I went to Fishtown. We bought a little tiny place, little hole in the wall, but it was serviceable to people. We went through a year of trial and error in 2021, and we had I would say a bad operator, somebody that we didn't really know, was unsure how it was running. And after that, we ended up I called a good friend of my sponsor, Rick Halverson, who's here. He's been like my little brother. And he called a friend, and we merged with Pennsylvania Recovery Center. And since that day, we've just been opening in one place after another. Been out in Phoenixville, we have mental health, we have addiction spots, both with housing. Fishtown's still going, and of course, there's so many people from out here. I know many people from Northeast Catholic, the Alumni Association. I had an amazing event there last year. Father Joe at Father Judge. I don't want to give him too much there, Jim. Any credit to the Father Judge guys. But you know what? And that's what I've done. So I've given back. I've really taken. Someone said, what were you really good at in your life? I said I was really good at hockey. I was really good at drinking, and I seem to be really good at recovery. And that to me is, I always say I couldn't have done this without God in my life. And there's days I didn't have anybody but him, and I would go out alone. I was in my car, whether I go out in public, and sometimes all I had was God on my shoulder, because I don't think a lot of other people really wanted to be around me. And I had to rebuild my image in a lot of ways. I don't have one of those crazy stories, but I knew who I was, and I didn't love who I was at the time. And I had to rebuild relationships with my kids, with a lot of people that I'd wronged, and show them that there really is a good person inside. And I think a lot of my friends knew that. I think a lot of people did, but I didn't know that at the time. And so I've spent my time now for 3 years giving back in addiction, trying to make a business of it. I've met so many people that support me. And that's why I say, go back to the beginning of playing hockey in this town. It transcends to what I'm doing now, because all the love and support I've gotten from the Philadelphia community has been remarkable. And I could not have done this without the collection of people in this community. That's what makes me go every day. I've been to every city in America probably through my travels with hockey. And there's not a lot of places that have the heart that Philadelphia has. I can safely and surely tell you that. And that's why making a business here, opening a business, being part of the community has been the best thing that's happened to me in this area. Making the NHL was a great accomplishment. Giving back to people, being able to set myself up with good people, with a lot of good energy, and being able to help people in dire times, especially now with what's on the street, with the fentanyl, the drugs that have no, there's no protection from them, they're just in bags. Kids are taking them because they're so addicted, they have no choice. We see kids die, and it's heartbreaking. We see people die of alcoholism. because they're not willing to make those changes. And I'm telling you, when I see people, and everybody, there's not a family out there that I've met yet that's not affected by one single person with an addiction, mostly alcohol. And being honest about it for me has been the most important part. The hockey part, I'll tell you a good ending to things, and I'll leave it at this. Perseverance has always been part of my story. And when I got let go by the Flyers, somebody came to me. It was actually a gentleman at a deli on Route 38. He said, "Hey man, I'm really gonna miss you. And you were great, you were honest, you spoke the truth." And he said, "Why don't you keep talking hockey?" I said, "Well, where am I gonna do that? I'm not doing TV, there's no radio." So he said, "I don't know, find a way to do it." So I went on a podcast. I found a podcast. An old friend of mine named Anthony Sanfilippo used to write for the Delco Times. People know his name. And this little guy is named Russ Joy. He's our host. And I went on and we started talking Flyers hockey. I got a little severance package. It wasn't a lot. I waited that 1 year to come out. And I saw the things that were going on in a different corporate setting than the one that Mr. Snyder had built. I mean, when I watched the things that this community was able to do at Flyers games, how they came together, I said, I can't sit back and watch this happen to a team that is as blessed as the Flyers. The Flyers, to me, embody the community spirit more than any other team because of the 70s. They put they bullied teams into Stanley Cups, and that stuff reverberates with the community. It doesn't mean they outskilled everybody, but they won. And then you have that Rocky movie come out. There's a lot of things that were so great about Philadelphia, what gave it that name tag, blue collar warrior town. So I went on the podcast and I spoke completely honest. I said, "This is crazy what's going on." Talked about the team. And little did I realize that 3 years later, my voice resonated so much with the fans of this town that the podcast went from number 600 to number 3 in North America for hockey podcasts on random weeks. And Keith Jones, my old teammate, came in and said, "You know what, we don't need gaslighting broadcasts anymore. We need people that are honest." So they brought Snow the goalie into the Flyers, and I'm back doing pregame radio again. So there's a happy ending to a lot of things if you stay true to yourself, if you persevere, if you're honest, if you have integrity, and carry a little bit of God in your life. There's a whole lot of good things that can happen. I'm truly blessed. Father Joe, thank you so much for having me here today. I think your intro was too kind, but I will take it. It's on video. You can't get away from that. And to everybody that came out, it's early. I'm working on 2 hours sleep. I was excited after the Flyers game last night. But I'm so glad to be here and to see so many fresh, smiling faces to come and listen to me talk. As I said, I'm a part owner now of Pennsylvania Recovery Center. I'm one of the partners. We have spots in Fishtown, Phoenixville. We have addiction and mental health, and we have support living for everything, whether it's mental health or addiction. We also have facilities in Cherry Hill, and we're working on one in Burlington County and Marlton as well. It's been the greatest journey of my life. I love getting out, meeting people. It's what I do at the Flyers games. When I get over there early, I just sit around the Chickies and Pete's bar, meeting people. To me, that's the best. And yeah, I do. Of course, I'm at a bar, right? But that's the way it goes. I mean, you always do find your best conversations at a bar, and it probably not has changed. But I'm truly honored to have been able to speak to you this morning. As I say when I leave, I hope my message helps one person. I always tell people with young kids, and I tell my own kids that, just be careful, because especially with alcohol is still the most deadly thing out there, because you can turn the corner and there's a place to buy it anywhere. And I always tell my kids, and by the way, the last thing I'll tell you, and Jimmy Dillon would know this too, the greatest thing of my recovery has been my kids. Since the day that I stopped, those girls and my son have given me nothing but rewards from God. 3 daughters that are all in Division I scholarships. They all play at Loyola, Maryland. They've trained with Jimmy. And my son is almost 6'6", 270-pound, 16-year-old football player. I've been blessed. They're great kids. They're amazing kids. Thank God for their mom. Their mom did an amazing. I wasn't always present, but I had good heart and kindness, and I think my kids have picked up on that too. That's the best part for me. I won that. I can never look back and say, I always tell that story with Dennis Hopper. We've all seen Hoosiers, right? Where Dennis Hopper comes in that gym drunk and his son's playing. And I felt that embarrassment for that kid in that movie. And I promised myself that day, that will never, ever happen. Never. I will never do that to my kids. And it never happened. One day at a time is how I live. I love to give back to the community. I love to talk to people. If anybody out there needs help, have them reach out to me. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Chris. Boy, that was really powerful. I mean that. That was fantastic. And we have a great tradition of questions after our speaker. So if you have some questions, please raise your hands and we'll try to get you as fast as we can. All right? Go ahead, Mac. Excuse me, Father Mac. No.
No, Mac is fine. Chris, what makes you good at recovery? That's the key thing, the whole thing. The one thing that grabs me, I want to know, I'm the chaplain for the police department. I'm choked up here. But we have a group called Badges and Bottles, our recovery team. But I'm just saying to you, what makes you good at recovery?
You know what, I think first of all, being able to help people, being able to relate and talk to somebody, I think is so important. But for me, honesty. Like, I can't walk through life and not be honest with myself anymore. There's days I get that, we call it stinky thinking, but I can't let that overtake me. You know, I have to take the wins that I've had and be totally honest every single day with who I was so that I continue being a really good version of myself. And that's what matters to me. But that to me is what it is. One day at a time, slowing things down too. I always tell people, you know, I met a young kid last night, he's like, hey, Chris, I got 6 weeks. I said, that's amazing. Take it slow. And that's something, because everybody can get their heads inundated, you get wrapped up in something. And I always tell people too, watching out for like a relapse. You can get as excited at relapsing when you're happy about something rather than being sad. But I'm honest with myself in the morning. I get up and say a quick prayer, help me get through the day. But I've slowed it down, and that's probably helped me a lot.
In terms of helping others, is it your honesty with the other that really helps you? You tell your story and say, look, I've been there.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? And that's a great question. It's funny because when I was, as I said, those times I was alone in 2006 when I knew I had to go away, like I was sick and I knew it. Like I looked myself in the mirror and go, this is not normal. Like this is insanity. It's me being able to look, and when I looked on the internet, I went on and said like famous celebrity alcoholics. I was looking for company, just somebody that was out there. And I found out there was like 500 listed. I mean, they're open about it, they didn't care. Now, remember, that's like 17 years ago. Things are different now. Like society's changed. People come out all the time like, hey, I have a drinking problem. It's almost like a badge of honor. I don't know if people need to wear it for that. But for me, when I talk to somebody, it's absolutely sharing my experience so they can have hope and say, wow, if it happened to him and he was in the public spotlight, that's the platform that I have to use so someone else can understand that it's okay. It's okay to have a problem. It's how you pick yourself up out of that ditch and move forward. And that's what life's all about. No difference with addiction, except you have to stay vigilant with it because it can kill you if you don't.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Did you ever have a relapse after you came out of rehab?
Yes, I did. Yeah, and I said that I had a hiccup around the 2-year mark. And I always tell people, for some reason, be careful when you're out like around the 2-year mark. I think there comes to be like this, and if you knew how I relapsed, it was just the dumbest thing too. But that's how it can get you. You know, you have to have your guard up, and you got to be prepared. But yes, I did have one. You know, I always say relapse is not a requirement at all. You don't need to do it. Let me be, if anyone's struggling, I can be that guy. I've done the work for you. But yes, I did. And did I learn from it? Yeah, because at the end of the day, it just becomes part of my journey. And that relapse taught me. I learned something else from that relapse. I never went back to the level that I was before because I would sneak it more. People knew my story. I'd just try to be quiet. I was doing radio, so if we had like a week or a few days on the road, I'd just go hide off in a bar somewhere and take, you know, that's what we do. Alcoholics love hiding their liquor and hiding away from everybody, and that's kind of normal trend. Yes, Father.
Chris, one of the part of your mission, and we talk about this a lot, and even when we do interventions, and Mac, he's the best. I've been with a lot of people before. Makes him feel really comfortable, even the family, and does his thing. His success rate's pretty good. But part of your mission also is to do this, getting rid of the taboo of mental health and alcoholism. And we've talked about, like in our communities, it's taboo. You're trying to normalize that. Can you talk to us about what you mean by that?
Yeah, and I hate the comparison, but I think it's fitting. When someone has an ailment like cancer, and they beat the cancer, they come out of it, nobody vilify or takes a shot at that person, right? So I wanted someone to say, if there's a person that's struggling from alcohol use disorder, there's no reason they should be treated different in the community. So I want to shake that stigma off. I want it's like if you're wearing like a coat of armor, break it off you, because all it's going to do is keep you hindered anyhow. I need people to understand that there's going on. Now, I read something the other day, like 50% of some young group of population has mental health issues. And we know, and scientists have said it, and I believe what scientists say you want, but there's going to be decades from the pandemic of mental health issues for kids that have gone through it. And so that's what we're dealing with. And that addiction comes of that, they're co-occurring. But for me, the biggest thing I'd say is, hey, yeah, I had an addiction to alcohol. And I got through it. You have to sell hope. And that's the thing that I want to sell when I go and hit the streets, is selling hope. I did this. I was a .63. You can't look at me and tell me that you can't, because I did it. And I don't care if I played hockey or whatever I did. I somehow found a way to break the trend of my alcohol disease. And that, to me, is probably the single greatest accomplishment I made in life. No different than anybody that came through the other side of operation or cancer treatment or something else that's an ailment. It's no different. It's a terminal disease. It's progressive and it will kill you. But I need people to say with the mental health thing, Father, I think that's more important. Insurance companies are going to continue to fill up their coffers of money for mental health for years and years to come. And I need people to realize that it's okay. We deal with a lot of military, the VA, but there are people that just have flat out bad days some days. They're not bad people. They're just having a bad moment in time.
Any other questions?
So I'm glad you brought up mental health amongst younger generations,
Yep.
because I think one of the big things mental health in the younger generations is the phone screen, social media, a lot of addiction to social media, because they're getting more and more things of how they should be, and if they don't go up to the what their people on social media are, they feel like losers. They feel like they're sniped on social media. Do you see, if people come into mental health for that specifically, not exactly alcohol or drugs, but addiction to social media or addiction to, phone screens, do you see similarities in how they're treated for mental health, the same as like being treated for alcoholism, like the same, different kinds of addiction, but like similar steps in recovery?
I will tell you one thing, some of the things I've heard for addiction, that's definitely a mental health. That's a great question, but you hear, like I saw a study the other day that says kids are on their tablets for 4 hours a day. An American kid, average of 4 hours a day on their social media or whatever it is. I can't imagine how that's good. First of all, for your eyes, but for all the stuff going in your head, and especially the world we live in now, it's gonna be kind of crazy town some days. And social media only adds to that. I think the one thing when I first started learning more about my disease, there's a lot of different diseases. I've had a person call me one day and said, Chris, I can't stop shoplifting. This is a 50-year-old woman with kids. And I was just like, oh my God. But that's a mental health thing, and so that goes on. The one thing I will say is law enforcement is doing a better job trying to get people the help they need rather than throw them in jail for 30 days, because there are people that are so salvageable that are stuck both in their own head or in an addiction that there's no other way around it. That is a great question, and I'd love to see more studies as time comes. How much does social media and being on your phones like that actually add to the crisis? Good question.
Oh, I want to ask a question. Everybody has challenges and addictions of sorts, but I was wondering, how did you pull yourself out of that ditch? What was critical for you to be able to make the change? How did you actually accomplish what you did to get out of your alcoholism?
It's really funny. At the end of the day, it was AA and my sponsor. I got a sponsor. And when I finally started sticking around younger people, sober people that were just like me, got out of my own head, realizing like, you know what, dude, you're a hockey player. That guy might work at Wawa. He might be a lawyer. You're no different. You're a drunk just like them. And so you know what? I walked in and I ate humble pie because I didn't care. Now I walk in, I go, I'm all happy. I had a kid last night. Who knows the guy? You know the guy, Flyer Eric, with the tattoo in his head? Everybody's seen him? I'm going to his meeting tomorrow night because he's got 22 years sober. You know, I mean, that's unbelievable. He's got a big tattoo right in the side of his head. He shaves it every day. I mean, that's passion. Let's admit that. I think that's there to stay. You know, but that's really that's essentially what you have to do. I always believe you got to be around sober people, and you have to know who you are and be totally honest with yourself. If you're not fully honest with who you are, you'll never get sober. Never ever. Yes, sir.
Why do they call you Bundy?
Yeah, well, I'll make it really quick. It's because of Al, not Ted. That helps. Does that clarify things? So you can come and say hi after. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that there were a lot of people in your story who saw that you had a problem, including your sister. What would your message be to people who have people in their lives who are struggling in terms of getting them, help?
I always say it's always the willingness of the party involved, and I've dealt with that so many times to try to get, you know, we talk about interventions and stuff. It's more than, I don't like twisting someone's arm. I want them to be able to correlate what I'm sharing with them to saying, I need to be better. You can't drag someone by the arm to rehab. It's not going to work. I had a guy come up the other night, and it was, you know, I think Rick was there. It was at the first Flyers game, and I had the guy come up, and it's a hard thing to hear, even still for me, because he said, you know what? Thank you so much for what you do for the addiction community. Like, you're really making it easier for people to talk about it. He said, I have a son that's still out there, and he's on pills. And I said to him, that kid wants to talk, send him over to me. I said, you know the fentanyl? He goes, Chris, because I'm waiting for the call every night. He goes, he's not ready. And that's the part where you can bring the horse to water, try to force him to drink all day. If he doesn't drink, there's nothing you can do about it. It has to be the willingness of the person. And as I always say, figure it out quick, because you may not have a tomorrow. I talk about that with relapse too. You know, I may be able to go out again, but I may not have another recovery in me again. I could drive off a road and kill somebody, my life could change. So I'm very vigilant of that. But yeah, teammates saw me play, and I think when you're in your late 20s and 30s, you're in that setting, it's kind of a macho thing to do. And I won't lie, like, I became a character in my own movie. The drinker, and you know, the guys come in the morning, I was loved, I was a joker, but I'd go out and play 23 minutes a night. Like the third most ice time minutes every night. And so it was weird. It was a balancing act. And instead of breaking that cycle in my 4th or 5th year when I should have gone away, I continued it, and it probably cost me a couple of years.
Gotta ask, did your son have any interest in playing hockey?
He did play hockey. And then the pandemic came, and then kids were getting dressed in their father's pickup trucks, and I said, no more. You're playing football, kid. You know what? He actually grew so much that when I watch hockey now, I see a lot of smaller guys. And then when I just watch his mentality a little bit, he had more of a football attitude, and he loves it, so it's good. Football parents, by the way, too, are just great. Hockey parents are out of their minds. You're gonna race that.
We'll get that off tape.
Right, Jimmy? You know that. Not like us basketball parents, right?
Not at all.
Hey, Chris, I teach a course on sports and spirituality. Can you talk a little bit about how your spirituality got you through not just your recovery, but even going through your career? How it helped out?
Yeah, I mean, I pray to God before every game. Every game, I put a towel over my head and pray to God that He'd keep me safe in that game, have me play the best of my ability. But really, when I'm not gonna lie, when I first came into AA, I struggled a lot with my spirituality. People talk about the higher power. I couldn't figure out what the higher power was. I'm like, what is this? And I kept wanting, I kept waiting for this white figure to show up at the end of my bed and sprinkle something on me, and my alcoholism would be gone. That's not it. And I think for me, and it doesn't even have to be a super religious person who goes to church every day, but you can carry God with you everywhere. And I think that's what I do. I know He's there, he or she. I know that somebody's watching over me, and I have to respect that. It's hard to sell that sometimes to people. That's the hardest thing for me when someone asks about the spiritual part of the program. You know, how's it work? I couldn't figure it out for 2 years, and that's when I was relapsing. And finally, when I let go, I just realized that for me, when I used my higher power was my kids, you know, for what they were out there doing. And ultimately, that got me one day after another. And that's why I said I reaped all those rewards. But that's tough, but you know, in terms of people trying to get there, but I do, you know, I may not be open about it every day, but every single day I pray to God and thank Him for where I'm at today. Help me be a better person today and than I was yesterday, and tomorrow than I was today. And that's how I live my life.
So you were talking about insurance companies. Do they assist with your recovery houses, or do they self-pay people? Or?
So, it's a multi-layered question. Yeah. So what happens is when people come in, unfortunately, as everybody knows, most insurance policies are done or looked at by socioeconomic, the way it goes in life, and you know, we get people come in with policies, and that's how it goes. I will say this too: the most proud I am with that is if someone doesn't have insurance, we take them anyway. We don't say no. If somebody's that struggling like that, like I make a policy. If we can't, they don't have insurance, and they have nowhere to go, we'll get them in. I also have the Therien Foundation, which I set up just about 6 months ago. We're trying to get that some money in the coffers, and a lot of that money will go to helping people that are struggling, getting themselves like a month off the ground, whether it's paying for sober living, trying to find them a job. We're a little bit behind in that project right now, just because we're trying to become more prevalent in terms of getting people into treatment. I have a couple projects I'm looking forward to in the next little while. Just a lot of good things going on, but insurance is a pain in the butt. Yeah, I mean it's like anything, you know, you have a certain thing and then the insurance company pays you another thing. It's just I don't get involved in that. I get involved in the people business, not the insurance.
A friend of mine's wife started for women. She's got a couple recovery houses where it's all self-pay.
Yeah.
Because of the insurance companies.
Yeah, well, most of the self-pay for housing is self-pay. Yeah, because it's, you know, you're trying to get people to have some responsibility instead of just paying for someone's rent so they can live there, and so that's very, very important. But in terms of, you know, helping find someone a job or making a referral, we do all that. If somebody wants me to go to a union with them because they're trying to get a job, let me know what time you're going. I'll be there for you. So that's how we roll. We're not just trying to cure you from, you know, your alcohol or your drug addiction, whatever else is going on. We're trying to get you to live life again. And that ultimately is, I think, what we're all trying to do is live a prosperous life and be happy.
Very, very noble.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You can run, but you cannot. When you're in recovery, you're looking forward. How hard was it for you to write the book where you had to look backwards?
Fortunately, I got a good memory. So I was able to, the great Wayne Fish, who actually the book piece wants to talk to me later because we're coming up with the 1-year anniversary release of the book. And there are some, I had to order more because they do get sold pretty quick. And yeah, I'm really proud of it. Road to Redemption. It details my story, a lot more significant stories. There's a lot of hockey stories, but after 1 year, it's funny, I'll share with you what I would tell Wayne, because Wayne's gonna ask you, you know, what is a book meant? What has it done in 1 year? And to me, it's not about the hockey part. The hockey stories are fun and they're great, but it's really about the outreach it's made to the addiction community. I think it's a book that has a chance to be timeless. You know, it can go 50 years from now, someone can read it and hopefully get a story that they feel comfortable about with dealing with addiction or mental health from my perspective. So it's been a great read. It wasn't that hard to do because all I had was a voice recorder, and I was going back and forth to Canada a few times last year, and I just belted it out. A lot of stories from my youth all the way up, and it's well detailed, and Wayne Fish did an amazing job with it. So something I'm really proud of. I never thought I'd ever have a book. Triumph, the reason I got asked to write a book was because I'd just been here so long and everybody likes a sports story. So when they called me at Triumph Books, I said, hey, I got a better story for you. How would you like it? He goes like, yeah, for sure. So it's been great. Thanks for asking, Rich.
Thanks, Chris. And again, Chris has a book. We have a couple of copies in the back, and the following people are lucky enough to win. And Chris, I think, would sign it for you if you hang around. Jackie Perez, Frank Hampson, Mike Campellone, John Barnes, Ryan Kilkenny, Jerry Meza, and Joe Perry. So You can pick up your books from Beth.
I'll sign your name.
He wants some Chris. Chris, remind us again the name of your podcast.
Podcast is called Snow the Goalie. We do pre-game, intermissions, and post-game live. I tell everybody, listen to us on post-game. We won't lie to you.
There you go. Snow the Goalie, and then go buy Chris's book. Thank you. Our commitment is always to get you out of here at 9 o'clock, and we have a couple minutes to spare. We do have a great tradition of questions, and boy, oh boy, you guys asked some great questions. So thank you very much. Stay tuned for our next event. If you can make the black tie, please join us. And thank you for your attendance this morning. You take care.